Welcome back to another exciting episode on the show. I'm so happy to be with you guys again. As always, it's a beautiful day and a beautiful episode of 18 Secrets Books. And you guys know we only bring the best of guests to our show. I take out my time to go out there to sort out for the best guests, call them the top 1% of guests. And yeah, as you always know, our guests are authors, people who have written down a lot of wisdom in books. There's some information you cannot find anywhere except in books. I'll try to make sure to bring you this information by bringing down best-selling authors to our show. So our guest for today is not always because we always bring special guests. So our guest for today is a very special guest. Today's guest is Autumn Williams. Autumn Williams is a poet who explores human experiences of time, loss, and dreams in her Kiku's-based #1 best-selling poetry collection, Clouds on the Ground. Autumn, welcome to the show. Autumn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so I would also like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah. My name is Autumn Williams. I'm a poet. I have 2 books. I have my chapbook Waves, that's a shorter poetry book, and then I have my full-length collection, Clouds on the Ground. I started writing poetry after the illness that I have, myalgic encephalomyelitis. It got worse, and I became bedbound. And after a year of that, I started writing poetry as a way to cope with that. And I really found a lot of help in that, and I really liked it. So I've been writing ever since, and I really enjoy writing poetry and, sharing it to put out goodness into the world.
Okay, thank you so much, Autumn. So I have some questions here for you, and I would like us to get into them. All right, so tell us about your experience living with chronic illness. How did it lead you to writing poetry, and how has it shaped your voice so far as a writer?
Those are great questions. I don't know. I look back sometimes at right before I started writing poetry, and I'm not really sure what triggered it. There's not like a big moment where I was like, oh, I should start writing poetry. I was just resting one day and wanted to do something, and I guess I was kind of just messing around a little bit, and I wrote a poem. It wasn't something I did before. I've written a few poems in my life, just in school or whatever, but I wasn't able to do much. And so I just for fun wrote a poem, and I really liked it. And I kept writing poetry after that. I got addicted to it really fast. And I found it really helpful. And like I talked about earlier, but it shaped my voice, my poetry. I write poems to be universal. So when you read my poetry, you're not going to find, occasionally I'll write just a straight chronic illness poem, but it's pretty rare. So you're not going to find a lot of I was sick and here's what happened poems. You're going to find a lot of nature, metaphors and things like that. I wanted to write things in a way that other people could read the poems and put their own life into it, to find comfort, to find validation, to feel like they're not alone. So each poem, especially in Clouds on the Ground, it's written in a way to be universal. And but the illness, if you have a chronic illness, you can see how it shaped the work. I talk about time a lot and how that feels strange and different, the way it will feel long or short. I'll talk about, flying. um, just because that's the thing when you're sick, you visualize a lot if you can't move around a bit or a lot. And then, talking about loss and leaving it open for interpretation so people can see what they want to see from it. But definitely the illness shaped my voice.
So, what drew you to free verse poetry, and what do you love most about that style of expression?
Yeah, when I was writing poems, that first one I didn't really know what I was doing. And I always loved the idea of poetry, but I never really got into it. Like I would read poems here and there, and I had a favorite poem, but I didn't study it. I didn't know it. And after I wrote, I don't know how many I wrote. It might have been after that first one, or it might have been after a handful, but I remember looking up online, like, can a poem be whatever you wanted it to be? I didn't want any sort of restrictions. I think I had, at that point, I was just sick of restrictions in my life, and I just wanted to write whatever I felt like writing in whatever way I felt like writing. So I looked it up, and that was free verse poetry. There's no rhyming scheme you have to follow, no line limits or anything like that. And I just went with that. Um, and I think, my favorite part about writing free verse is the freedom of it. It really gives it a lot of space to become something musical, something that I want it to be. I don't feel limited in what I can put into it. It can just become, what eventually became my voice. I didn't really I didn't purposely make it what it was. I just kind of let it flow out because I didn't want anything to be difficult as I was first learning to write poetry. So I really enjoy the freedom that free verse poetry gives.
All right, thank you so much, Arthur. You really enjoy the freedom that free verse poetry gives. So, tell us about your chapbook Waves. What inspired it, and what themes does it explore for those who are hearing about it for the first time?
Waves is basically a metaphor for what chronic illness takes from life. But it is also written to be universal. So people can read it and put their own experience into it. It is ocean themed poetry, and it just walks you along the beach. And then at a certain point, the speaker has to leave the ocean. So we get some longing for the ocean. There's some love poetry in there. There's some longing in there. It explores good things too, and hope and holding on, and just through scenery of the ocean and the sand. Um, but it's a really quick read. It's meant to just be a nice thing to just read real fast. I write accessible poetry. Um, I feel like with chronic illness, sometimes reading things that are really dense can be difficult. And I actually have been writing some longer poems now. It's been a while, but I still try and keep accessibility in mind. I like my poems to be easy to read. So Waves is meant to just be a quick thing, just an enjoyable quick read. Hopefully people will feel seen and feel like they're not alone, and just be able to escape into the ocean for a little bit.
All right, Arthur. So, your work, your collection, your collection Clouds on the Ground has been widely praised. Tell us what inspired this collection, and what journey do you hope readers experience from it?
Yeah, I guess ultimately I hope that they experience what they need from it. But it's written to be universal. There is some ocean poetry in Clouds on the Ground, but it walks you through a lot of places. So there's also the desert, there's the forest, there's roads, there's poems about time. I guess I hope that, they're able to find something that feels restful. They can read it and just relax. And if they're feeling sad, it might help, validate that. Like, when you're sad, you turn on sad songs. If they're feeling like they could use an extra dose of hope, I would like that I wrote it that way. Because Clouds on the Ground talks about loss, and it does validate that. That was a very important thing for me to put in there, is that a lot of loss isn't resolved in this life. Some illnesses you're not going to heal from, or you lose a loved one and you're not going to see them till heaven. And so I didn't want to invalidate pain. So I'm hoping that there is definitely just this feeling of being seen, being like, okay, this book knows that not everything resolves in this life, but also there is hope and holding on for tomorrow, for good things, and looking for good things while things are hard. When the big thing isn't going to resolve, there are other small things to hold on to in the meantime. So I hope that they are validated. I hope they feel hope. I hope they're able to find rest in it. It's got some love poetry, so if they just want to read a nice story, I wrote Clouds on the Ground to be fiction. So a metaphor that I do often is lost health as lost love, or also lost health as lost dreams, and that's in there. So whether it's entertainment or rest or an extra dose of hope, I hope that they're able to find anything that they're wanting to find when they read it.
Okay, thank you so much. I myself, I definitely hope my listeners, when they read it, can be able to find what they are looking for. So, is there a poem from Clouds on the Ground that's especially meaningful to you? And could you share a backstory to it?
Yeah. From the title itself, Clouds on the Ground, I wrote a poem, which is also called Clouds on the Ground. I took it from an experience that I had, and then the title itself, it evolved to be kind of the meaning of the book. But the experience was I was having a hard time falling asleep when I was really sick, and I couldn't visualize flying because my body it hurt too bad. And human brains sometimes go into these protective states. So if you're too sick to walk, sometimes it will stop you from visualizing walking. So that's what it was doing. It was stopping me from visualizing any sort of movement. And I was trying to fall asleep, and I like to visualize flying in clouds, and it wasn't working. So I just had this idea to visualize the clouds resting on the ground all around me. And that worked really well. I was able to relax. My body calmed down. It knew it wasn't trying to move, and I was able to fall asleep. So that became a new visualization for me that I made up when I was really sick, and I used it sometimes. And it's been a while, but occasionally I'll use it still. And when I was putting the poems together, that was one of the poems, and I thought Clouds on the Ground sounded like a really good title. And as I thought about it, I realized every poem in the book could fall under Clouds on the Ground, which is specifically the subtitle is Poems on Time, Loss, and Dreams. So all of them fall under any of that subtitle, but the clouds on the ground, the clouds are good things. And sometimes clouds are in the sky, which is, healing in heaven if you have a chronic illness that you can't heal from, or finding loved ones that, are in heaven So that's the clouds in the sky, but the clouds on the ground are the good things that we bring down to us, which is anything good on the earth. So clouds on the ground just became the title based on, just this holding on to hope through things that are hard.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna. So, uh, we want to know what your creative process is like. Many people they find it difficult to write poetry. Those a lot of people have tried, but they find it very difficult. So, what is it like for you while balancing chronic illness, family life, and writing poetry?
I write poetry when I have energy for it, and usually it's every day, but you know, little spurts here and there. Um, I don't push it, otherwise I'll get sicker. But I think for people who are interested in writing poetry, you can make it whatever you want, and to just try and do it when you're relaxed and try not to have any rules or any sort of, oh, this has to be perfect, but just to get things out. Like you can edit later if you really want to. It can just be really therapeutic to just, when you have some inspiration, to write something down, and you can use it, like I'll use it as escape. I'll just write a straight escapism poem about like flying in clouds or whatever. But I also write a lot about walking or running, which is not a thing that I do. So for me, that's sort of an escapism thing to write that way. But the other thing that people can do is to process emotions. So if you went through something really hard, there's always straight journaling, but if that's not something that you feel like you can do, or maybe you've done it a lot, or maybe you don't want to, writing a poem about a hard thing that you went through can be really therapeutic. You kind of step outside of the experience, or you can step even further into the experience, depending on what you need when you write the poem. But you can use it as entertainment, as escapism, as healing, as processing emotions. For people who want to do it and maybe are hesitant, I recommend just relax and don't give yourself any rules for a little while. Excuse me.
Okay, so do you think the best poetry are written from a place of pain?
Um, I would say yes, sometimes, certainly, often. The best poetry can definitely originate from a place of pain. I think sometimes a place of joy also can generate some of the best poetry too, but pain is definitely a powerful tool in creating really good poetry.
So you mentioned that you write poetry every day, like little bits of poetry every day. So what triggers do you have daily that makes you to write poetry, like little bit of poetry every day?
Sorry, I couldn't hear some of that. Something
You
about
mentioned,
poetry every day.
yes, you mentioned that you write a bit of poetry every day. So
Uh-huh.
what trigger do you have every day that makes you to write a bit of poetry every day?
Okay. Okay. Yes. Lots of things. Uh, Certainly, I need to be feeling healthy enough, and my mind needs to be clear enough. But I don't know. It's usually just something inspires me. I'll be reading other people's poetry, and that can definitely trigger some of my own. A song triggers it, a memory, um, sometimes just a word, or sometimes just a sound. Lots of different triggers.
All right, thank you so much. So, when someone finishes reading your poetry, what do you hope they carry with them into their own lives, practically?
That's a really good question. Ultimately, I hope that they carry this idea that it's very valid to have pain that they don't just need to shove away, that they don't need to hide, that they don't need to get over, that it's okay to feel all sorts of emotions, and that it's valid to have to reprocess loss that isn't going away. And that would be my ultimate hope, that they could feel that.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your remarkable, beautiful perspective on finding hope, meaning, and comfort through poetry. Thank you for having me on the show, and I really appreciate you taking out your time to be here to share with us your work. Also, Clouds on the Ground is the one best-selling poetry collection. So, for those that would like to get their hands on this poetry collection, how can they do that?
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great being here. I really appreciate it. They can find Clouds on the Ground on Amazon. It's for sale there. But if they go to my website, autumnwilliams.com, there's links to Clouds on the Ground. There's a link to Waves, my chapbook, which is free. But Clouds on the Ground is for sale. It's an ebook or paperback or hardcover.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you to all my audience for tuning in today. You guys are the reason why we are able to do this. Thank you all so much. And make sure to check out Clouds on the Ground on Amazon. Thank you so much, Autumn, for coming to my show. All right.